Going live. What's up, everybody? How's it going? Turning this thing on here. Getting everything set up. I don't live stream very often, y'all, so give me a second to make sure everything's running here okay. How's everybody doing? Good. Check, check, check. Cool. Sweet. All right. What's up, everybody? How's it going? How are you? Happy Saturday if you're catching this live. My name is Brad Dollar. It's great to have you all here on my channel watching. For any of you subscribers, welcome. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. Seriously, this last year has been a total ride on this channel, growing it and making these videos and just figuring out more about myself in the process and like what I love to talk about and what I feel excited to bring you in terms of videos and whatnot. So thank you for being here. Today's live stream is just going to be basically me setting up my Pro Tools session for you. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about where to get started, about what to do beyond just opening it and making music. So I hope, through this live stream, by watching me set up my session and me kind of walking you through it, that it, helps you or inspires you or just makes you want to go make your own music in some way or another. So that's about it. Don't know how long this is going to be. This could take 5 minutes. This could take an hour. We'll see. Typically, when I'm getting my session set up, I like to do it far enough in advance where I can, think about it and put some thought into it, and really make sure I'm creating all the right parameters for success. I think the most important thing when it comes to recording and making music, especially when other people are involved, it's just me today, but when there's other folks who are part of the recording picture, just make sure you're ready to capture everything. Make sure you're ready to mix everything, to take ideas into any direction. And you can also use that in your advantage to, create limitations, right? To remove a bunch of stuff and just only have like one or two things to work with. So it can go all kinds of different ways, but yeah, that's what we're going to do today. So let me take a sip of this LaCroix. This is Beach Plum. I don't know where this ranks on my LaCroix flavor list. It's probably 5, maybe 6. Number 1 is hibiscus, definitely. Number 2 is key lime, especially as we approach these summer seasons. Key lime is just fantastic. It tastes so good. Beach plum is pretty good. I like it a lot. I'm not a fan of pamplemousse. I know that's a big flavor people love of LaCroix, but here we are talking about water, and that's what live streams are for, I guess, to stay hydrated and find your favorite beverage. What's your favorite beverage? Folks love Liquid Death. I prefer this. Liquid Death is good though. So I will be hydrating a lot in this. I believe firmly in it, especially for your brain and your ears. It's good to stay hydrated. I think sometimes, like when I feel like I'm not hearing high end or low end properly, it's usually because I'm real thirsty. So drink up. All right, so let's get right into this. I'm mirroring my screen, so we'll probably get into the big portal of mirrors here in a second as I switch over to Pro Tools. But bear with me, we'll have fun. So here we go. I'm gonna turn this little background music down and pop on over to Pro Tools. All right, make sure this loads up. Check the live stream here. Oh, we need to share the screen. Bam, there we go. Sweet, now that should work. Just double check here. Bam, sweet, there it is. Awesome. I'm also on dog dad duty, so I might need to take the little baby dog out to a little bathroom break, but I think we're good. I think we are set up for success. Sweet. So here we are in Pro Tools. You could take anything I'm about to say and apply it to pretty much any DAW. Obviously, routing is going to be a little bit different and things like that. But, for the most part, like the overall setup and the approach to bussing, the approach to just kind of making sure your session is ready, this can pretty much translate to anything. But definitely, like with each DAW, you have to apply your own parameters and your own sort of process to it. I use Ableton Live a lot as well, and like most of what I'm talking about carries over to it, but not everything. So just be sure to tweak and modify as much as you want or can. So Cool. I'm watching my phone here for my second screen. This has instantly made me realize I need a second monitor to make all of this work. Cool. All right. Pro Tools. I love it. It's great for mixing. It's great for making music. Obviously, it's been the industry standard for a long time. And so I keep going back to it. As far as like setting up a session, it's important to be familiar with your tools first. I think a lot of like what makes sessions fun is just feeling confident with what you're playing with and what you're working with. So, before you get to anything like this, like a mix setup or like a big session setup, be sure to like, just play around and like get yourself educated. YouTube is great for that. But this is my general setup for when I'm going into a mix. My recording setup is probably a little bit different. It depends on, where the song I'm about to record is in terms of like process, like if we're writing it, if we're recording it, right then in the moment, if we're bringing tracks in, all kind of just defines like where we go with it. If we are playing with the click or not, most usually with the click. Sometimes some songs, are served better without it. So there's so many other variables when it comes to recording session setup. And if you want to see a video like that, I can definitely set one up. But today's pretty much geared towards mixing. However, you can set it up like this and be ready to record and switch over to this in a moment's notice, which is great and will keep your ideas flowing and keep you inspired in the process. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and just create some tracks. We're going to sort of imagine we've already got some tracks in here. And if we get some time, we'll throw some actual clips in and we can kind of play around with, kind of maybe what that sounds like and whatnot. But for now, we'll just sort of like create some ghost tracks here. I don't think I've ever had any two songs be exactly the same, even on an album. So it's good to have templates, right? But let's imagine you don't have a template, and let's imagine you're trying to create something fresh. And this, this is a jumping off point. And this is, usually what I like to do when I'm just, when I want something totally new and different in my approach for mixing a song. I'll just kind of start fresh and not pull from a template. But I've already got in my head what I lean on, so we'll pull that in either way. So let's kind of create some tracks and kind of, make believe we've got a song in here. So let's say let's create 16, so much. Let's create 8 tracks. And let's say we got a kick, snare, overhead left, overhead right, and then maybe we got a bass, DI. We got a guitar left, got a guitar right, and box. Cool. That sounds like a pretty like normal session setup. Let me just kind of drag these down. So obviously, like in a fast workflow, obviously when you're trying to like make a lot of music quickly, you are going to have templates and you're going to have things that pull up automatically. So you don't have to go from scratch every time. But for the most part, like this is if you're going right from scratch. So these are our tracks. These are our main things we have set up. I have in my Pro Tools session set up at all times. Like I want to be able to see the inserts and the sends available. And if you switch over to the mix window, I'll have more of an insert view available there typically. But just for today, we'll just leave it with only inserts A through E. Sweet. Oh, I should probably fake pan these too. So overhead left, overhead right, guitar left, guitar right. Nice. So cool. So these are our tracks. This is our song. So this is definitely not where a mix stops, at least for me. I think there's a level of purity for sure. If you were just to only have these tracks, not have anything else, no auxes, no master bus, like no nothing. However, we do like to add flavor to our songs. So that's what I'm about to show you how I set up. So let's get right into that. Now, to give some context, I've tried a lot of different ways of like bussing subgroups, having like a group just for drums and a group just for guitars and a group just for vocals. And, sometimes like you do need that, especially like for background vocals. But I really, really find that I tend to lean towards like the Michael Brauer style approach of a mix setup. If you're not familiar with Michael Brauer, please go check out his work, check out his tutorials, his sort of overall approach on making and mixing music. He is, genius is such a fanboy kind of thing to say, but he's evolved so much over the years and never just done one thing. So, I have a lot of respect for his mix approach. And I think a lot of like what I've adopted over the years, like it really makes sense in terms of like where he's coming from with it. Obviously it works for all these like huge classic records he's been a part of, but from a practical approach, using the Michael Brauer method, so to speak, or some, hybrid of it, really is a helpful kind of thing, especially when you get towards the end of a mix. And we'll talk about that. So what does that mean? Michael Brauer has a set of buses, A, B, C, D, and I think sometimes E, E, F, G, he'll keep going on an effects bus. And he has those all categorized by like priority, like A bus is his vocals. B bus is like his like bass and things like that. C is like things he wants to put in the center, so on and so forth. D is drums. And so instead of like having these individual buses where things are summing down to and you're still trying to combine them and creating kind of just a mess, honestly, this way you're gluing everything that's harmonically centered together at the same time. And by harmonically centered, I do mean like how it sounds, but also how it just kind of sits in the mix together. Like sometimes a vocal and a guitar need to live on the same bus because they're in the same space, especially like filtered vocals and things like that. And sometimes like it's cool to take drums and put them through like a, very like mid-range guitar focused bus to mix things up. So this can be treated as having like basically a bunch of different colors available for you to paint with. And that's how Michael Brauer looks at it, like setting up a bunch of different colors to paint within a mix. If you look at his classic setup, he has a bunch of like racks of gear and he's got all these like, different buses going to them from his SSL. He's since gone totally in the box and recreated that, which just gives, more, value to what he's saying because it works both ways. And so that in the box approach is what we're going to do, where we're going to try to use all these different buses and things we'll put on them for color. And then any of the actual like control and, surgery we need to do on a song, we'll do on the individual track. That way we're getting this overall global feel and the tracks are getting their individual polish, while at the same time you're creating a cohesive mix. By the end of it, then you've just got these buses left over that you can use to create stems really easily. You can use to like rebalance your mix and create alternate mixes really quickly. And then it just kind of like feeds into your whole master bus equation in a much more fruitful way. So that's what we're going to do. Here's a little more hydration for you. I hope you're hydrating wherever you're at. Sweet. Cool. All right. So typically I just kind of run with A through E and an effects bus. So let's put those in. And these are all just auxes. A, B, C, D. All right. And boom. So let's add those in. So we'll go ahead and title them. Always when you're adding anything to your session, especially Pro Tools in the audio tracks, title it, put a name to it, do something with it to make sure you always know what it is. Cause anything can happen and you can get, busy really quickly and not realize what you're working with. Okay. So A bus, B bus, C bus, D bus, E bus. Oh, I need one more. Effects bus. Sweet. So from there, then you just need to set your inputs to your buses. I've got my template set up here. It should all be there. There they are. Out of order, that's okay. Bus, effects bus, bam. So then once your buses are set up, the next thing you should do is go to your tracks and route them. Now, please keep in mind that like delay compensation and phasing, like all these things start to come into play as soon as you start doing any busing. It's unavoidable. And I do love the science of making sure everything's perfect, and you should always be phase checking things and like do delay compensation like where you need to, but also just make music. Don't let too much of the science get in the way of your choices. If you come up with something that sounds great, like leave it. But if you're struggling, you're like, why doesn't this combination sound good? Well, it could be something to do with like phasing or things being out of time. So just keep that in your mind, but don't make that like a focus of your creative decisions. I think it's really important. Cool. So we'll take our drums. I also like to kind of color code things sometimes just to keep it interesting and focused, and we'll make those on our D bus. Bass, that's definitely going to go on the B bus. Nice. Guitars, that's going to go on the C bus. Now, Michael Brauer, his approach is like the C bus is stuff in the center. I think about C as like C mid-range, the stuff that's like mid-frequency focus. So guitars are definitely part of that. And then vocals, that goes on A bus because, vocals are super important. If there aren't vocals in your music or you're just making instrumental music, then you can put any other sort of primary instrument that you need to on that bus. So cool. So everything is routed. Let's color code the guitars too. green because that's classic. And then vocal will make red in honor of John Cutler. John Cutler would always use the red fader from the Crest Gamble consoles they had, and they put that on the vocal to make sure that like no matter where you were looking, like the red fader was that. Mike McGinn told me that. Maybe Mike McGinn came up with that, but I think that's like John Cutler, Grateful Dead lore. So rest in peace, John Cutler. Excellent human, excellent producer and engineer. In the Dark, if you haven't heard that record, like I'm not a huge Grateful Dead fan, but like that record is awesome and it's really beautiful how it's made. They tracked it live. It's great. So slight tangent there, but check it out. Even if you're not a Deadhead, it's worth checking out. Sweet. So let's actually go ahead and color code these two. So right now we've got our, basically our kind of mix set up. We've got our tracks and they're routed to these buses that we can kind of color all the tracks together as one thing with. There's actually two more things we need to add, and that's a master bus and a monitor bus. Now, the master bus probably makes a lot of sense to you. It's to treat the overall master output of things and to, create, more color and, more anything you want on your overall mix. The monitor bus is set up so that you can actually listen back through things and have a monitor pathway in your session without, if you don't have a console or something like that. So you can actually hear what's going on in your session. You can add, anything sort of like post mix, which is great for meters, great for any sort of like, phase checking devices and things like that, to really hear what's happening. You can also use your monitor bus to feed headphones if you need to, if you're actually trying to like track from a mix session or whatnot. So we're going to create those now. Also, if you do internal layback, which is where you don't bounce the track out, what's where you actually record your mix back into your session, you definitely need the monitor bus set up so you can hear what you're doing. So here we go. I guess not definitely, because you could listen through the track, but it's better to have a monitor bus. That way you're not always listening through a track. Cool. So let's add those here. We're going to add a master fader and another aux, stereo aux. Cool. That's just master. And that is mon for monitor. All right, sweet. Man, what do you do if you got a burp on live stream? I guess you need like a mute button. I need to get one. I guess I could do it on the console here. Cool. If you see the console come up, it means that it's burp time. Gross. Okay, sweet. Nice master setup. So now the last thing you want to do with your master setup is just assign all of that to be on your mix bus. So you can leave it mon left right, which is just the main outputs, but it's better to treat this just like a mix bus. I always try to just imagine them on a console. I always just try to imagine that I'm mixing in the same way and I need a mix bus. Like that's your main output that you're working with on a console. So I know it's kind of an old school way of thinking about it at this point, but that's sort of like how I was taught. So I just kind of lean on it. Great. And then your monitor track gets that bus input from the mix. Oh, I made a mono aux track. You can title it right here. It's fine. Bam. Okay. The mix. Nice. Cool. Now that's it. Now, if you were to hit play on your session, like you would be getting audio back from all of these tracks through these auxes. Pretty sweet. So this is cool, right? Like but if you're not going to add anything to your auxes, like what's the point? So this part is totally subjective. This next part is totally subjective. You can add whatever you want to these tracks. You can do whatever you want with anything. There are no rules when it comes to making music, which is the best part of it. You're not going to break anything, even if things are terribly out of phase and distorted. Like most people don't notice. And as long as the people you're making music with are happy and excited, then like it's good. And everyone's got room to grow. Like I certainly have a ton of room to grow in how I mix and how I approach mixing and making music in this format. But again, like you'll get on a path and you'll figure things out and you'll figure out how to make yourself and the people you make music with happy. So don't get too caught up in like the measuring of things and get lost in the technical part and not make any music. That's really, really important. I just want to stress that with all of this. Cause I do some stuff where it's like, oh, it doesn't make any sense. Like I do some stuff where like that definitely is creating issues, or I'm creating some weird gain staging thing, or I'm not using the compressor right. Like it's okay. Like as long as we're getting to the sounds, like that's really all that matters. And there is a time and place to make things very pure and to make things very dynamic and to gain stage things properly. And like, that's also a color and a flavor, to do things in a very clean and precise way. So finding out like where you like to live in between those is probably the best thing you can do with your time. And I hope that working on like setting up your mixes and trying out things like that, like creates that room for you to experiment with that. So cool. So I'm going to decorate my my mix here a little bit and going to get it ready for if I was going to get a session going. So we'll switch over to the mix window. A little more LaCroix. Sweet. Nice. Thank you all for watching. Again, really appreciate you for being here. If you are not subscribed, please be sure to subscribe and put up videos every couple weeks or so. I try to do them as much as I can. Sometimes a little slower, sometimes a little faster, but overall, I'm just making overall, I'm just making videos about making music. I've been making music my entire life, making music with people in the studio. When I was a kid, I played on the stage a lot. I didn't, toured, around like the local scene of the SF Bay area and whatnot. I haven't been on any like huge tours at all. So most of my life is spent like developing music, developing artists and whatnot. So that's what this channel is about, sharing with you what I know. For me, like engineering is, it's another tool. It's another means to an end. It was the main focus of my life for like a very, very long time. And as I've grown and like wanted to do a bunch of other things like produce and develop music and develop strategies with artists, it's become just another, color in the palette. And so now I look at like setting up Pro Tools like this, like setting up sessions like this, as a way to like, how can I inspire people? How can I inspire the people I'm about to create with? How can I get out of my way of what I think it needs and really set this up to be what's going to excite the person who I'm about to make music with, even if that person's just me and I want to like make a new track or something. What's going to excite me? What's going to get me going and make me think, outside the box? So always think about that first, like what's right for the song. Like, don't just like add your stuff to a song and think like, oh, this is going to be it because it's my way or the highway. Just go ahead and like keep your mind open each time. But it's good to have a baseline of what you like. So I'm going to show you my baseline, at least right now, of what I like to run with, and then we can go from there. So first and foremost, I'm always really trying to like recreate some sort of console feel. If I could buy any console right now, it's going to be a Neve BCM10. I love that thing. I really want one of the new ones because they're all functional and they're a little expensive, but they got the Neve thing going and everything's going to work. So that's where I'm at in my head right now. Currently, a couple of years ago, I was like super gung ho on like having an SSL style front end. I do love that feel and that sound. And I would use, the Brainworks SSL 9000J plugin a lot on the front end. And I do still use that. But right now, the first thing I'm running on all of my buses is a Neve 1073. I'm using the UADX subscription right now. So it's been really great. It's a really great way to like run native on my computer, which has a lot of horsepower, and still get that juice. And, I don't have a ton of UAD satellites and accelerators to get all the plugins I want for a whole mix. So the native UADX Spark subscription has been great. And this is pretty much all I do. I will definitely check my tracks and make sure I'm not like blowing anything out, but I don't really add any gain here. I don't really add any EQ here, at least not at first, not to like get things going. But I'll just sort of like put it in and let it rock. And this way, at least I've kind of got that tone going. Then I'll sort of get into each individual bus. So let's start there. So the A bus, my vocal bus. If I need something a little more spectacular, I'll mute the 1073 and I'll bring in like the 737, the Avalon 737, which is a really nice, very beautiful, colorful sounding pre that has a lot of like clarity and feels very modern and pop. I especially love putting line level stuff on the mic setting and then turning the gain down. It's just a ton of glue right away. The compressor is great. The EQ is great. So I go back and forth between these two for vocals. But right now, let's just pretend we've got the Neve on, and I'll close that out. And then right away, I want to do some sort of like, again, this is like a color channel. Like this is not for sculpting. Like my actual vocal, if there's problems in the vocal, that's where I'm going to use, Pro Q and, carve stuff out and, make it a little more, workable, right? I'm not going to do that though on these main buses. You can, as like if everything's perfect at the end, you can go through and sort of carve things out, and we will put a little bit of Pro Q on each one, to give it some flexibility. But for the most part, like do your surgery on your tracks itself. So with that in mind, I'm not putting any sort of surgical EQ before this next device. I'm going right for it, and that's going to be for a vocal. Pretty standard, but right now I'm going for just the classic like UAD LA2A compressor. This thing's great. Make sure the gain's down. I put it on the limiter function. I think that sounds better on vocals. And I keep the peak reduction like pretty minimal. This thing is mostly flavor for me. It's also good with this one to like check your gain level because it does add a lot of gain right away, but it's mostly flavor with just a little bit of needle movement. I only want to see the needle move a little bit on this. For sometimes it's good to crush it, but again, if I want that distinct crushing sound, I'll do that on the individual track. That way everything's not crushing this bus. Cool. There's a compressor. And then from here, I'll typically add like some sort of other EQ. And this is just depends on like where I'm at in my life. Kind of, this last few mixes I've been working on with the artist Aisha Fukushima. Great tracks. I've been using the SSL 9000J from Brainworks right here. And I know this is like inserting another channel strip into the flow, but let me see. Will it go? Come on. It's like, don't do it. There it goes. Oh yeah, if this crashes, by the way, I'm sorry. I don't know how stable the computer is going to run with like Pro Tools and plugins and stuff like that. So I will try to come back. And if not, I love you. But anyways, here we are. So I'll use this again, like for an EQ I can get some color out of, but still do some shaping. I'll make sure I turn off the compressor, and I'll usually like turn the split function off and make sure the virtual gain is down. I don't really need any more gain if I'm going through a Neve. And then that's it. Then I'll start playing with it. And then from here you can filter, which is great. You can add a little bit of top end. You can work on the mid range. It's just a great EQ for that. There's just enough color and just enough surgery at the same time. So I love this thing for that. Alternatively, I'll also sometimes use the massive passive. Here we go. This is another great EQ to sort of do the same thing. Again, like there's more color here than you think, but it's fairly clean. It stays out of the way. So you can get away with a lot, especially if you've, already done a lot of like, maybe, a lot of squeeze or a lot of like EQing and things. This can be a great and beautiful way to make it back up. So I definitely love this thing for that. And then from there, let me just get rid of some of these so we can stay in here. Cool. So some sort of channel emulation, some sort of compressor, a little bit of EQ. And then from there, I mean, we're pretty much at the end of like all the stuff I want to add. Depending on the song, I might add more, I might have different compressors all doing a lot, all like stacking in a different way. But I almost always, like right before I'm done, I go to the Studer. Now, I know people like the ATR 102, and I like it too. I don't have it though. So this is the one I use. And for the most part, it really gives me more of the tape feel that I want than the ATR 102 does, at least initially. That's great on the master bus. I should just get it. But for now, this has been the main one I've been using. Again, it's available in the UADX Spark subscription. And I'll keep it pretty simple. I'll, leave it on 30 IPS. So not all, but most of the high ends retained. And depending on the track, I'll put it on either 456 or 900, 456 or GP9. These are my two favorites. 900's okay. It's kind of like a little mid-range punchy, and 250 is really nice, but it's like a little soft sounding. So I like standard 456 or GP9, which are great tape formulas. And then I'll leave the calibration where it's at. And then if I really feel like the track's missing something, then I'll get under the hood and play with, the low frequency EQ, the high frequency EQ, and comparing that back and forth with the high frequency driver EQ in the front end. What I love about this particular Studer plugin is the way you can play with different tape speeds, especially if like, on, the A bus, the vocal bus, if the vocals are just super sharp and like compressed and like pointy, but like they're almost there and perfect, and you still want to add a little bit of top end. This is a great way to shave off some of that like abrasiveness. And then you can play with like turning the high frequency driver up or down with, different tape speeds, either 7.5 or like really rolled off and low, or 30 with like, it really being all there. So there's lots of room here. And I know it's like not the way you're supposed to use a tape machine. It's definitely a set it and forget it type thing in real life, but this is a fun way to play with it and really get a lot of cool tones out of it. Sweet. One more. Keep them coming. Nice. So I like tape on stuff like this. I feel like it just brings a little more glue to it and makes everything just sound more real, makes everything sound a little more like believable in the end. I know it's not needed. For a long time I didn't have anything like that, but you always need some sort of like harmonic saturation, some sort of glue inside of your mixes to really just make the ear respond, depending on the kind of music you like and are working on. Some stuff needs to be ultra clean, but for most of the stuff I work on, like it needs some tape flavor. And then the very last thing I'll do is if I think it needs any extra EQ, this is when I'll throw on like a Pro Q or something like that. And we can shape and play with it. This is a great place as well to do mid-side EQ on your individual stems because you're doing it on the overall thing. So, like for vocals, well, yeah, for vocals, you can take some like on the side, you can go ahead and like move all the low end out of it. That way it's not like clogging up the sides from like the background vocals and like all the nice top sheen is coming through. And you can, add another like kind of mid-range bump, just right in the mids. That way you're not like, if you want to get the vocals to punch through a little bit, but not make the whole thing come out. It's a great way to do it. You don't have to do mid-side EQ. You can certainly just do standard EQ, but this is a great place to do it. Just kind of like last in the chain. And that's vocals. Oh, we need to talk about effects because before I move on from setting up my A bus, my B bus, C bus, I'll always like to add effects. Let's just add some of those really quickly here. Let's add 2 verbs and a delay. You can have more than that, of course, but let's add just that to be simple. So we'll add 3. Okay. Verb 1, verb 2, and delay. Okay. Sweet. These need to go to the effects bus. I forget when Pro Tools added the search function for buses, but I love it. And then verb 1 is verb 1, verb 2, and delay 1. Okay, sweet. Verb 1, like these days, I just love all this old stuff. I'm just kind of stuck in my ways. It's fine. I love any of the, kind of Lexicon 224, Lexicon 480L type reverbs. The 224 is a great alternative if you're, low on processing power, say from, not having enough for like the UAD 480L, which is great. I should have enough, but I think using this mic with my API on, it's not going to work. So I digress. 224, just something sort of like synthetic, something that can be long and very, very colorful. I'm not looking for anything real for my first reverb. I want it to be something that's classic and synthetic. I love stuff like this. Alternatively, you can also put like a plate here. This is a great place to use like the EMT plates or any kind of plate that you really want. Something just very colorful. That's how I think about the first verb. The second verb, I like something that's a lot more like real life, roomy. My favorite thing recently has been the Sound City reverb. I've got a video about that if you want to check that out. But this thing is awesome. It's definitely processor intensive, but it is the most believable and an exciting room to put up in terms of like a room reverb, and it's great for like acoustic guitars. It's great for like a little bit mixed in inside the vocal, especially in sections where you want it like not to be cavernous, but you don't want it super stark dry. And you can get a lot of control over it. It's got the mixers built in. It's got different forms of like EQ and compression. You can add like more reverb to it if you want it to be longer, and it's got all these different modes. So depending on what you're working on, you can just kind of pick it based upon that. I've been loving this acoustic guitar live, and I put on the KM84s. This is kind of the most, roomy part of the room. And then on the mixer, I turn off the close rooms. Sweet. Okay, cool. Nice. Check. Sweet. So I usually will just turn the close mic off. I feel like it feels like a little too phasey when you leave it in. So I'll turn the close mic off, and you can play with the pre-delay and things like that too. It's got 2 different modes, like remic and reverb. I feel like the remic mode sounds better, but you can use the reverb mode too. Okay, stand by. All right, we're back. We are back. Check, check, check. Make sure we come back on screen here. Okay, good. Sweet. The life of live stream. Anything can happen, which is why I typically like making videos so I can start and stop as much as I need. But it's good to be here with y'all. Hope you're having a great day. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe. Please like. It's great to have you, and good to have you back. So, anyways, talking about the remic and the reverb modes. So you can use them in both ways. I tend to like the remic mode a little more. But depending on the situation, how much of the reverb that you really want, it's a great place to kind of play with those. So cool. So that's verb 2, and let's add a delay. BX delay. This has been my favorite for a while now. This BX delay. It reminds me a lot of like the Line 6 Echo Pro, or like it also has like kind of a Sound Toys flavor to it. I do love Sound Toys Echo Boy. I don't have that personally, but it is a good one. And this is just a great delay that feels very studio-y. If you want something, a little more like, pedally inside of Pro Tools, there are different delays you can try. Let me see, like this one. I love this delay. Actually, it's a lot of fun to play with. It's fun to do like feedback up and down with. So sometimes I'll use this instead. It's just a little too pedally, but it is fun. Let's see here. Excuse me. All right. Cool. Coming back. Sweet. I had to burp so bad, y'all. That's his LaCroix. So here we are with the BBD. It's a great delay as well. And then if you really want something a little different, like if you want like a tape kind of delay, there's a lot of ones out there you can try. This Tape Echo that comes with Pro Tools is pretty all right. I think the Galaxy Echo is also pretty good as well. If you want some of that tape flavor. I find it to be a little too hard to get something like studio feeling, and I feel like it's got some phase issues when you try to use it like this. I could be totally wrong, but for the most part, again, I'm just sticking with the BX Delay 2500. And with all of these, if you need some flavors available to you, if you need some different colors set up, you can always just have a few different delays and reverbs ready for you. You can just have those already set up and then use them or not. So if you thought maybe you were going to use let's say, like, I really like the air reverb a lot. If you wanted to use that, like, this is like very like modern, fresh kind of sounding, just great DAW reverb inside of Pro Tools. You could have that ready to go. Same thing with, you could have like a spring for the room reverb if you wanted something a little different. Just whatever you want, you can just have that stuff ready to go. And I think that's the most important part about getting these mixes ready, or getting setups ready when you're going to work with other people, is just have some options, so you're not spending too long shuffling through and looking for stuff. You can actually just pull up and start working with them. Cool. So those are our effects buses. I will usually send the delay to a little bit of the first reverb just to glue it together. I was actually listening to an old recording of one of my old bands, and the delay on the trombone was really good on one of the songs, but like there's no reverb on it. And so it's just like a very stark delay. And I was like, oh, you should put a little bit of reverb on your delays, and it reminded me of that. So definitely put a little bit on there to glue it together. It's important. And then from there, you can set up your individual buses to have some of these effects. It is important to like add the sends to your effects from the individual tracks. It works much better. It's a lot cleaner. It'll make for your stems to be a lot better. But it is nice to glue the whole thing you put into that bus together with one overall sound. So from your main bus, in this case the A bus, you can go ahead and send to those. I'll get fully set up, and I'll send to all the buses I have. On a big mix, I might have even more auxes with like different, like a Leslie type feel on it, or like a phaser type feel on it. So just getting them all ready to go is the most important part of this process. Nice. So once the vocals are set up like this, you can pretty much start moving on to the next thing. So let's go on to the B bus, the bass bus. Bass, I really like to not overdo it. It's super easy, at least to me, to like make a bass that like really overtakes everything. And it's one of those things I need to just keep working on in my mix life. Just I need to keep working on low end and get better at it. So for the most part, I'll try not to like overdo it on this bus. And I don't usually have a lot of bass elements. You'll have like the bass DI itself, but sometimes you'll have like a bass DI or a bass amp, and then you'll have also like a synth bass or an 808 and things like that. So this can be a good way to bring them all together. So the first thing I'll usually do is some other kind of compression, and I love a distressor. I love a distressor. Oh no, yes, my trial has expired. Let's go for the one I actually have. Boom. Bam. Back on the UADX, and this is just a great compressor for bass, especially for like a modern bass sound. You can add harmonic distortion to it, which is nice. You can make it so it just focuses on the mid range if you want to squeeze that, or take a high pass filter to the side chain, so you're not having too much low end squished. The ratio, can work really, really seamlessly and transparently, or be like really, really crushy. And it's just a great compressor. It has this weird amount of color, and then also it's way more transparent. You think for something called a distressor, you kind of think it's just going to like just obliterate something, and it can. You can throw it in nuke mode and you're just crushing, but it can also stay out of the way too. So I really like that. People have their own views on presets. I tend to like presets on a plugin I'm trying to find new ways around and try to get inspired by things. And as a result, I found some really good presets inside of the UADX plugins, all of the UAD plugins, really. My favorite one for this is Bass Tightener. It's just great. It's just got a really kind of like middle of the road ratio, a little bit of harmonic distortion, and just a quick release, long attack, quick release. And it's really tasty. It's a great, tasty compressor. So then once that's dialed in, then I'll almost always go for some sort of like SSL 9000 EQ. I love the low end EQ on this. It's good for anything really. I like the Pultec EQ a lot. I like some tube style EQs, but they do have a little bit of resonance to them, and they can get really, really bassy really, really quickly. So I love this EQ as both like color and cut for bass. And same thing as before, turn off the dynamic compressor. You can put the compressor on if you want. I just leave it off, so I'm not overly compressing things, and I'll bring the virtual gain down too. Great, just kind of great overall EQ for that. I also love the EQ on the 1073. It's a great place to filter or, boost a little bit if you need to. And then from there, I think like one of the biggest things you can do for bass to give it flavor and give it tone is to add some more of that tape, add some more of that tape flavor. So let's go ahead and put that back in here. Boom. And I'll almost always leave it on 15 inches per second because I don't ever feel like you need a lot of the top end from bass. If it's a bass synth, maybe you do. And then I'll put it on GP9 because it's just punchy as heck. And same thing as before. Again, it's going to go faster now. It's like a lot more rinse and repeat. Like you can play with the different tape speeds, and you can play with the different EQs inside of here, and kind of find your favorite way to use it, and the favorite setup, your favorite boost this, cut this, and you can do it song by song and have a lot of fun with it. Also, it's fun with bass to play with the different, tape calibration. If you want to hit the tape a little harder, make it a little grittier. I think one of the things that makes bass really stand out is a little bit of harmonic saturation. And so this tape plugin can be a good way to do that without having to add like an overall big distortion to it. And there's other cool plugins you can use for that. Decapitator is a great one for sure. But there's a bunch. You can also, play with the gain staging too. You can really crank the input on this and get it to break up and distort, and then bring the output down, and so you're not blowing out your track. But just be careful, because that's definitely gain stage trouble territory. But overall, that's another great place you can play with it. And then from there, pretty much the same. One more EQ. I like the Pro Q right here. It's another great way to kind of see overall what's happening. You can also, when a bunch of them are going, you can look at all of them together, and you can see a frequency graph happening of like where things are clashing, which is really helpful to go and carve things out of the way and make things a little more precise. If you're not sure if you can trust your ears, if you're like not in a great room, then that's a great way to use it. And overall, the frequency analyzer on this thing is awesome. So even if I'm not EQing something, I'll throw the Pro Q on just so I have like a frequency analyzer. So great. Typically with the bass, I'll just wait until I really hear what's going on before I start trying to cut things out or change anything. So we'll leave that there. Bam. And then we're time. Let's see, what time is it? Cool. Let's keep it going. And then for effects, not putting a lot of effects on bass, but sometimes I will put a short room reverb on there. I learned that from, Jack Wire King, Kings of Leon tracking. I guess he tracked it to Blackbird, and there was a lot of room mic on that bass, and it's a great bass sound. So I'll always have a little bit of room reverb on it as well. Nice. Okay, and let's go on to the C bus here, which is our guitar bus. So guitars, just anything that's ever been tasty on guitars really works on this bus. And again, you can run other stuff through here. You can run Rhodes through it, any sort of keys, Wurlitzer, synths, anything you really want to like have some of that mid-range punch. This is a great place to put it. My favorite compressor for guitars, on individual tracks, like I do love in 1176 for sure. I think that, that's one of the best compressors you can ever put on a guitar. Whether you have the UADX stuff or what, like all the 1176 copies sort of do the same thing. Certain ones sound better, but having that on guitar is a great choice. But for the main C bus, I love an API 2500. Boom. I just like that you can get things to really like come forward in a bright way and still feel controlled. It's a great blend of color, but still being, not too messy, doesn't harmonically saturate things too much. Like really just compresses and sweetens things up in a great way. And it's just also a very like modern sounding compressor. It seems to work on everything you throw at it. And this particular version has a mix knob, which is super helpful. And between the different like circuits, the feed forward and the feedback and the way the gain structure works, there's just so many flavors inside of this. So for guitars, especially, I love it. And it's definitely like a Jerry Finn style thing to do to put your guitars through a compressor like this. You can put your whole mix through this thing too. I like to, for sure, which we'll do in a second. I also like to bring the ratio down so I'm not like over compressing these things and keep the release pretty quick. Kind of everything just medium. And I like the old school style feedback style compression. If it's a very like big moving sort of song with a lot of different guitar parts and like counterpoint, I'll definitely unlink the compression so everything's happening a little more independently, and basically leave it there. Add some makeup gain. That's it. And this thing's ready to rock. Sometimes, like if I give the right setting, I'll just drag and drop it across all the different tracks to see like what this sounds like on the mix and what it's doing, and sometimes leave it. It's just a really flexible compressor. So if you don't try anything else from any of this stuff, like definitely give this one a shot. It's a good one. After that, I'm another like fan of the Massive Passive. I think it's great for guitar. There's something about that Pultec style high-end boost, the 10K kind of 8K style boost is just really, really nice on electric guitars, especially, and acoustic guitars. And the way it cuts without letting things, the way it cuts without making things too messy or like causing a bunch of like weird like frequency issues down the pipe is just really helpful. Great high pass filter, great low pass filter, just all around great EQ for this stage of a mix. And for guitars, there's very few that I would prefer. The Neve EQ is wonderful. Again, I'm not trying to do too much EQ on the front end, but if you wanted to drag another one down there, you could. But the Massive Passive is a good fit for that. And then you guessed it, we're going to go right for a Studer. This is almost always my second to last thing in chain. And for this, I do like to just sort of leave it 30 EPs, 30 inches per second, which is the most high end retained. GP9, and then I'll leave the EQ where it's at when it opens, and then play with it as I need. I'll try not to use the tape too much for gain staging in terms of like driving the input or the output, like I would maybe the bass for a little more of that. I'll try to drive something else before it. But if you need some more grit from your guitars, you need some more like, you need like to sizzle, be a little more like Chris Lord Algae E. That's a great way to do it, just to crank the input. Just make sure you're balancing your output out as well. And then pretty standard now, we got a Pro EQ going. So this is a great EQ for guitars because it can get rid of like any sort of mud that's built up at this point. You can boost stuff back without it sounding too messy. It's a great EQ. And for very stereo stuff, you can do the mid side EQing, which is really, really helpful as well. So that you kind of like, aren't just getting rid of all like the mid-range, and mid-low kind of glue in the middle, and getting just rid of the messy stuff on the outside. Nice. And that's it for the C bus. And now we're on the D bus, which is drums, which is anything percussion oriented. I will typically still run 808s and big low and stuff like that through the B bus, the bass channel, mindful of like what other bass elements are there. But if you don't have a lot of drum elements, then you can just go ahead and use the D bus for that. If you're programming mostly beats, you got a lot of 808s or things like that, D bus is totally fine for that. Again, the Neve. Now, if it is like a very low end heavy song and it needs to sound modern, I will not use the Neve in the bass and the drum bus setup. I just think it maybe adds a little bit too much low end warmth, which is a great thing to keep in mind. And you can just use I would use like the SSL 9000 in its place. You can just drag those in. But for now, we'll leave the Neve. It's great for pretty much every other kind of drum track. And then I also love the API 2500 right here. It's great. You can smash the drums if you want to, and then turn the mix knob up or down to really balance it out as much as you need. And it's just great. Super flexible, super helpful. As far as EQ, man, I go back and forth right now. For drums, I really do like this Amic EQ. Let's pull it up. It's kind of like a George Massenburg GML style EQ. So it's on the clean, colorful side. That's a trend I have. It's a clean, colorful, and it does a great job. I feel like this plugin interface is always like a little laggy, which is something to keep in mind with it. Maybe it's just like my computer, but overall, it really does. Maybe it's laggy for a reason, because it does make you slow down and listen a little closer. But it's very flexible. Like a 1 dB cut or boost, you can really, really hear it. This is not a subtle EQ, which is just really helpful at this stage. I'm not looking for subtle at this point. I want the color and the taste. Now, it's important with all of this, like you're mixing into this. Like once you set this up, then you're bringing your tones through it. You're not really doing this at the end and trying to like shape it around what you did. I guess you could, but you're usually setting this up first and then mixing into it. So then at the end, your tracks probably won't have a ton of plugins on them. Again, no rules. If you get the sound you want, like that's great. Sometimes I think when you have too many plugins in your tracks and you go through buses, it tends to be like something's messed up. Maybe you overthought something, maybe somewhere you're overcompensating and it just keeps going down the rabbit hole. I've definitely done that a million times myself. So just think through it. Maybe just undo a few things. But the goal of this style of like mixing in this setup is that you have less stuff on your tracks and they can just be what they need to be. And they can be, just less, there's just less on there. And these color buses can do a lot of the heavy lifting. That's the kind of main idea. Sweet EQ, love this thing. And then the next two, pretty obvious, Studer and the Pro Q. Studer here on guitar, I'm definitely going to play with it every single time to figure out if the 15 or 30 is better. Depending on how bright or abrasive the guitars are, it really it can affect like which one you like or prefer. So start on 30. It's a great place to make sure you're not like losing anything and then like overcompensating later or beforehand, but you probably like 15. And then if you really are looking for something like moody, 7.5 is just so great on guitars. You will need some more top end because it will sort of disappear and the low end will start to come through. But man, 7.5 is a really like groovy sound for guitars. So we'll leave it on 15. We'll just imagine these guitars are super bright. And then I know to hear this stuff, like try it out, right? Like the best thing, even if I play some stems for you right now, like the best thing that you can do is to try this stuff out yourself and to download some demos and just play with it. Put your own tracks in there. That'll give you the best perspective on these things. So just keep that in mind. Like it doesn't really matter like what I'm dialing in here, because I could dial in one thing and then the next song is going to be different. And maybe we should do a live stream in a video where it's like, here's how to dial in your vocals, here's how to dial in your guitars. If you want that, we can definitely do that. But in terms of like setup, I'm not too focused in terms of a setup, I'm not too focused on like what the specific sounds are supposed to be, because I don't know what they are yet. And I don't want to overly EQ things just to use the processors. A lot of these, just them being on is going to give you flavor, and it's going to add noise for sure. It's going to add a lot of different things to it, but even just turning some of this stuff on can be all you need to do without doing anything else. So just start there, turn it on, hear what it sounds like, and then start playing with things and changing things. Cool. And so the E bus is like everything, like I think of E as like extra. So keys, I'm sorry, keyboard players. If keys are the main focus of your track, maybe C bus is a good move for it, but I like E for anything like layers, so like extra. So like a lot of synth layers, ambient layers, any sort of like, keys, like I mentioned, thing like horns, I will often put on the E bus and just kind of bring them all together. Everything is just sort of like auxiliary. And again, depending on the mix or the arrangement, I won't put them there. But if it's an auxiliary layer instrument, that's usually where it lands for me. So this bus I keep really simple. I don't want to do too much to it unless I want the layer to be very rich and flavorful. So this one is going to be a lot simpler. So in terms of like a sort of compressor, I want something that's sort of like out of the way enough and not like too messy. And honestly, it's probably the API again for the most part. I do like an SSL style bus compressor. The one that I use a lot is this Townhouse. Let me open it up a second so you can see it. This one's pretty good. This one's got a lot of flavor. It's not a transparent style compressor, but it is, that kind of classic SSL kind of vibe. But I really just prefer the API 2500 because you can use the mix knob. You can be subtle with it. You can have it just sort of tickle it. You can have like the gain crushing it. You can get whatever you want out of it. So it is really great for very stereo elements as well, especially because you can play with the link control for how much like it's compressing the left and right sides equally together versus them just doing their own thing. You can use the thrust circuit to make it very loud and punchy. It's just great. And the gain sounds really good too. I find it really helpful for things that have like been, I use a lot of Ableton stems, or if you track things in the box and you don't have, like an analog synth or something like that, then it's really nice to bring those sorts of things to life and make them feel more like the real thing. I think it's because it's more of a solid state type sound, and a lot of like synths and keyboards are like solid state. So it just brings a lot more of that character out, which I really like. Hope you guys are doing good out there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I super appreciate you. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you're excited about learning in terms of mixing and making music, or what you want to learn about the music industry or just the music path in general. Always happy to share. And I hope this video is helpful. Definitely subscribe if you aren't already, and tell some folks. We're on our way to 1,000 right now. We're just under 1,000, and it's been a journey. I'm super excited to be here with y'all and to keep carving it out. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate you, everybody watching and liking. Just everybody is super important, and it really adds up over time. Just like mixing, all these little things add up over time, and that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for one big winning swoosh. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be a lot of little things doing little bits that all add up. And I love that. That's just a great, analogy to life as well. I love that mixing just always does that. It keeps it real. Cool. Then on the E-Bus, again, I love the massive passive. This is just where I'm at right now. Maybe in a couple months, I don't want to put this on everything. If you looked at my mix buses and my whole mix setup, 2 years ago, it was all slate. It was like some UAD Pro Qs for sure, but just mostly slate. I loved it. I had figured out how to use the virtual mix rack pretty well, and I liked it. But then I just kind of got over those sounds. They're fine. The slate stuff is totally fine, but I need some of the classic sounds that I could like work with, that I was used to, instead of just purely model stuff, or something that's just completely different, like the BX delay, the 2500. Like it's its own thing, like I want stuff that's kind of its own thing, or I want the classics. And that's where my head's always at. Sweet. So the massive passive on the keys, again, it's probably going to be like some sort of boost in the cut of some sort. I feel like a lot of keys get like muddy in the low mid, so kind of cut out the like 270 or whatnot, typically on keys, and that'll be sort of like my main sort of like carve for it. Also, you want to listen to your mix and these EQs you're using. If you can like cut some stuff out that's not useful, cut it out. Use your high pass and low pass filters, right? Like maybe I don't need anything below 120 for these synths, so I'll leave it there. And maybe the top end isn't that necessary. Maybe you bring it down to 18K. So just play with it, and try not to do things too solo. To try to do things inside of the mix and make overall global decisions that focus on the song, not the individual elements. And this approach really, opens up that door for you to do that. Again, Michael Brauer, like there's a reason he's who he is, and clearly something is working. Nice. Where we at? Studer. So same thing, Studer, Pro Q. For the E-Bus, I don't actually want too much of the tape thing happening, so to speak. So this is when I'll use 256. And it's also when I'll leave things at 30 IPS. I won't do any gain staging stuff, and I'll just let it be its thing. And I'll just let it pass in and out. Sometimes like just putting it on input, where you're just listening to the tape machine's electronics, basically, you're not running through any tape, can be really useful. But for all these, repro is usually the thing I want, because I want to hear what it sounds like if it actually came off of tape. And then after that, a Pro Q. I'll do mid-side EQ if I need to. And I will boost or cut as needed, get rid of any nasty stuff as needed, or just leave it up as like an analyzer. So that's pretty much it. And then boom, now we're on the effects bus. And this one I keep real simple. Just recently, I decided I wasn't going to put the Studer 800 on this bus anymore. I feel like it added a little extra noise. However, if your effects are very digital sounding and you want something to glue it together, then the Studer can be helpful. So in this case, I'm using the 224 and, the Sound City reverb. So everything's already pretty much like, analog-y feeling. So I'll leave it off. But I will put a Pro Q on. And then sometimes I will put on some sort of like stereo width to sort of get the effects to really kind of pop out of the sides, and just kind of do a little bit. And sometimes even like, depending on the song, like a very, very light modulation. Not light. This is not light modulation at all. But it is tasty nonetheless. So just something like that on the effects themselves, not on the individual tracks, but on the effects. If you wanted something a little easier to control, you could also turn the mix down just a little bit, right? The dimension is awesome. It sounds super good, but just a little bit though is really all you need. Only sometimes, like it's very audible, and unless the song is like busy, it's going to be too messy. Like I wouldn't suggest putting it on like too acoustic of a track. But hey, maybe that's the sound. Maybe that's exactly what you should do. And boom, that's it. So those are the buses. That's the setup. You've got your tracks running into these buses. These buses run into your master, and the master either you can bounce out or you can do internal layback and print inside of it. And you can play with the stems this way, and then you can bounce out stems from these different buses, just very, very easily to make them. And you have a lot of global control over it as well. And it's just banging stuff around. It's just super helpful. And then you're painting with color and flavor right away, versus trying to just carve it out of every single thing and maybe carving things too much to get to a global thing. Whereas like, here's the global thing, and your tracks are still sort of raw feeling. You get the best of both worlds without just over surgicizing, being overly surgical with things. And there's a time and place for that, right? There's definitely a time to make sure that like everything is really carved out and get rid of nasty stuff and just make sure it's ready to go. And again, there's no rules. Even what I'm saying, like if all this sounds like lame, like don't do it, right? Like if you have your way of doing it, like do it your way. This is just one way of doing it. And it's a hybrid of like 15 different people's approaches that I've learned over the years, if not more, that I've absorbed coming into this. So there's really no rules. I just really find that this is a really fun and colorful way to get to some great end results. All right. And then second to last, but not least, let's just do a quick master bus setup. I do have a video on how to get your master bus set up. It's a signal chain that I have put together that I think sounds pretty good. I will put it here now, and we'll kind of like, you can see it as well, but definitely check out the video for more in-depth look at that. And that video, I think, does have some sound examples in it. So same thing is going on here with me. I want to have like some sort of like console. I want to arrive at a console with my mix. But this time I want something just very out of the way. Like the Neve is great. If I didn't put a bunch of Neve here, I would do Neve here now. But because there's so much Neve already, we're going to not do that. Going to turn off the compressor and honestly turn off the EQ too, and turn on the virtual gain. And I just want the console vibe, and I'll leave it just like that. If I think that I want to, maybe like boost or cut something, I'll do that. But for the most part, like that's just what it's for. And then here we go. You're gonna think I only have like one compressor, but I love this thing. It is a bus compressor after all, so this is actually where it's best. But the API 2500 is just one of the best things to kind of start with. Depending on how like where I am with the mix, I may put a Pro Q before that, like just a kind of a surgery type EQ to get rid of any like nasty stuff before we get too far into stuff. But if you're happy with your mix and you don't want to keep EQing and adding to it, then leave it out. Otherwise, do that and then a compressor. And from here, you can make sure you have a nice slow attack and a fast. That's too slow. Fast release. It is a master bus, and just make sure you're not just obliterating it. And if you are, turn the mix down a little bit. You want to make sure if you're mixing into a master bus compressor like this, that it's very light and tame, because if it's too cranked down and too set up to make things punch right away, you're going to like squish everything. And then you try to turn stuff up and you're not getting any volume. You're just going to be fighting with it the whole time. So be very careful with master bus processing as you're mixing, as you're tracking, especially as you're tracking. Like, it typically will turn all of this stuff off. Otherwise, you're going to get weird delay compensation stuff, and you really shouldn't be tracking audio through buses. I guess you can just be very, very careful and safe not to like be in like a delay compensation nightmare. But especially on the master bus, like you want to turn all that stuff off. That said, when it's time to like give it a squeeze, like I really do love this thing. We'll just back it all the way off, pull the ratio down, pull the attack here, and just make sure that it's just very, very light. I told you we're going to hydrate a lot. Then from there, you can, depending on how much flavor that you want, I have played with like inserting a Studer here as well. And I've been going back and forth on that recently as well too. But I do think just for like kind of an overall approach, it is nice to have it on here. I have the oxide as well. I think that's barely tapey. It sounds like tape, but doesn't glue things together the way you think they are. Like tape can be sort of transparent. Like it is full of color. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like a transparent thing, but it doesn't have to be this big, bombastic, distorted, like white striped sounding thing. It can also be very gentle as well. And so, putting down like a 456 setting, 30 IPS, make sure the gain staging's okay, turn the calibration down, and like it could be a really quick way to glue everything together really nicely. So we'll leave that on there. And then, oh shoot, I do need to see a few more inserts. So put inserts F through J back on just momentarily. And boom. From here, you can play with where you want that Studer, where you want the tape, if you want it at all. Sometimes before or after, I'll also play with one more EQ. I love the massive passive here for sure. But if you want to play with one before and after, you can like try that. And then I also love, do I love this? The Dangerous Bax EQ mix. And basically what a Baxen is, it's a Baxen Doll EQ. Please go look up the actual like description of what it is, but it's basically like an infinite lift. It never like curves off. It's like a shelf that just keeps going off into infinity. And it can tilt both ways. So like a low end cut will like just cut into infinity, and the boost will cut, the boost will go into infinity. So it's really like a transparent, very like phase coherent way of like adding or cutting things from your mix. And I love cutting top end out. Like it has this like 70K feature, like it's stuff you can't really hear, but like once you click it in, you're like, oh, it does make things better. But I'll cut it down to like 28. And this way, like as I've boosted things, like let's say I have the massive passive going and I give it a boost around like 16K or something like that. or even 27K, then you can have your cake and eat it too. You can give it a big, nice like sheen that will like pass through the other harmonics, but then also just make sure that it's not overly bright. Like things sound fun and like bright and like it seems like it makes sense when you're by yourself, but like most tracks out in the world that you love, they're not too bright. They're like they are smart, but they're not like overly high end boosted. There's a lot of top end, but like if you put it on an analyzer and look at it, it's like, oh, there's not as much there as you think. It's more of like just everything working in concert to give you that perception that things are brighter or have more low end. But that said, this is a great one to play with. That you can also boost the top end, you can cut it. It's same thing with the low end. So overall, it's a great like end of mix EQ. I wish you guys could see what I'm seeing on my phone, just so I can like make sure I'm like it's still working. That stream hasn't stopped. I've been watching Punk Rock NBA. You guys watch that channel? Awesome, kind of like all around like punk rock and like rock history. Finn McKenty, and the main video is this like Creed Rise and Fall video, which is just hilarious. But highly recommend Punk Rock NBA. Cool. No, it clicked on it. It clicked on it. No, go back. Okay, great. Nice. And then last but not least, we need to put on some sort of like master bus like limiter. This can be anything you want it to be. I really love the master desk. It's kind of my all around favorite. We'll put on just put on the main one. And definitely dig into like the manual on this thing. There's so many features in it, and what I like about it is it doesn't like overly explain it to you. You really do have to like learn about it, but it has different compressor modes, the way it actually like adds volume without like causing things to clip. The de-esser for the top end is nice, the compressor mix is nice. It's just all really useful stuff. So I love this as like a very last thing on the master bus, and you do need to play with it and be careful and make sure it's like all working all right. But for the most part, this is my favorite like end of chain limiter. I also, if you don't have that, you're just using Pro Tools. What's it called? I mean, it's always been called Maxim, but they changed the interface, so I forget what it's called. This is a great limiter as well. If you just need limiting, you don't want any of the flavor and stuff that Masterdesk does, this is a great way to get that. Cool. So that's everything. The very last thing I'll put down is on the monitor bus. This way it's not in the path. We're not actually listening to this. We're not like processing things through this. Is metric AB. And Metric AB is awesome because you can load reference mixes into it and play them back and forth inside of your mix and see how it sounds, see how the frequencies stack up, how it all correlates. But you can also just like use it as like a spectrum analyzer, a phase correlation meter. You can see like how loud it's going to be. Like, is it competitive? Is it ready for YouTube? Is it death magnetic style? So it's really it's just super flexible for this and a great meter to have. I really recommend having something like this. If you don't, even like I used to use a Pro Q for a long time and just put on the analyzer and let it rock. And that's pretty much it. That's the setup. Now we got a little bit of time. Let me do this. Thank you guys for being here. Super good to have you all here. That's why, yeah, I definitely need a second screen. I just see here if I've got some stems I can drag in real quick. I know you guys like hearing stuff. I should always keep that in mind. Something that's going to all play together, Basically, what I'm doing right now is I'm just going to drag some stems into here, and then we'll play with those. Talk amongst yourselves. Chat. Weekend, wherever you're at. Okay. Okay, bam. Files. Cool. All right, this is one of my tracks. This is called Apparitions. You can hear it on my Spotify if you want. It's probably a little too Halloweeny for where we are now and basically end of March, almost April, but it's the first one I found. So cool. Let me turn down the music on. Bam. Okay. Sweet. Cool. All right. So really quickly, since I brought those files in here, I am going to it's going to sound crazy as soon as I turn it on. I don't really know how everything is set up with these, but that's fine, right? It's fine. Okay, I'm overthinking it. I'm going to start with the monitor fader down just so I don't blow you guys out. That's how it works. I should put on headphones. Working. Well, this may or may not work. Um, this might not work. I am sorry. So the problem I'm having is I don't know if audio is passing from Pro Tools to that to y'all. Yeah, y'all. I don't think this is gonna work. Sorry, I gotta set this up better. I don't think audio is gonna pass through. I don't think audio is gonna pass through from Pro Tools. I don't think that's working. It's coming out there. Oh, this is getting bored for you guys now. I'm sorry. Thank you for hanging in there with me. This is the life of actually as a engineer figuring it out. This live stream is turning into me figuring it out live stream. All right. Well, okay. I don't think it's going to work. Okay. I will work on this for next time. I will figure out a better way of getting audio to come through Pro Tools and get it to actually get it to come out to you. Okay, yeah, that's enough. That's enough fiddling. All right, so that's what I'll work on. So I will work on for our next live stream together. I'll actually get audio to come through from Pro Tools to y'all, and then we can pick up right here where we left off. We can do Pro Tools setup part 2 and kind of go through how to actually dial in some tones for each individual track, and that's probably better than just trying to rush through it and just play some stuff for you guys. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's what we'll call it. Thank you so much for watching and being here. I appreciate you being here so much. I know you really want to. Well, I don't know if you really want to hear. I hope you want to hear how this stuff sounds. So I will come back with a part 2. We'll do a live stream part 2 and pick up where we left off. In the meantime, definitely go get some demos of this stuff. Try out what these sound like and set up your own mix bus setup and kind of see what's what you like and what works for you and what's best for your workflow and what would help you get to your ideas faster. What would help you express yourself faster? That's what you need to think about this. Not how do you do it faster, just how do you get the idea to come to life faster so you don't lose it. Especially when you're working with other people and you're all super inspired. Like this is a really great way to go about it. Just get everything set up for success. And take the same principle and take it anywhere else. Like if you're, getting ready for a recording session, like just make sure like as many mics as you can have set up, like make sure the room is ready to go. Make sure people are, their headphones are ready and that things are comfortable. Even if it's just a writing session with yourself, like make sure you've got everything clear out of your schedule and you can focus and you can work on what you're making. It's just important to create the conditions for your ideas to transpire in a fun and exciting way, because that's what makes it through to listeners. And that's what makes music so amazing and last forever in people's hearts and their heads. And it's what really helps music touch beyond the speakers. It's like the energy that you put in the moment. And, that's what I love about this mix setup process is it just is instant energy. All of this stuff adds energy and excitement right away as soon as you start putting stuff into it, and can really just make your brain start moving in an imagination direction right away instead of like fix it and repair it direction first, which is important, but it's great when it's not everything. So a little more hydration and yeah, I think that's it. Thank you all for being here. Please, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, hit like. I'd love to see you here again. We will do part 2 in the very near future and pick up where we left off, add some stems in here, listen to what this stuff sounds like. And yeah, it's great to see all of you. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. See if I can leave in an awkward way. See you guys later. Bye-bye.